You loved them. You still do. And that's exactly what makes this so hard to talk about. Because when most people hear the words bad parent, they picture something obvious: neglect, abuse, someone who wasn't there at all. But there's a different kind of parent, one who was physically present, who provided, who maybe even said, "I love you," and still left their child carrying wounds they couldn't explain for decades. They weren't cruel, they were emotionally immature. And that difference changes everything. Psychologists actually have a name for this. Dr. Lindsay Gibson, a clinical psychologist who spent over 20 years researching the subject, identified emotionally immature parents as adults who never developed the capacity to truly connect with their children's inner world. They weren't broken people, they were emotionally stuck, frozen at a level of development that made genuine emotional intimacy almost impossible. And if you grew up with one, there is a good chance you have spent your whole life feeling like something was off, without ever being able to name what it was. Today, we are going to name it. All 10 signs. And if you recognize yourself in this, stay until the end, because understanding this is the first step to finally being free of it. Sign 1. You learn to manage their emotions before your own. There's a moment most children of emotionally immature parents can describe even if they have never put words to it before. It is the moment they realized, without being told, that their parents' mood was their responsibility. That if something was wrong, it was probably their fault. And if they could just be good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, the storm would pass. Psychologists call this emotional parentification. Research published in the Journal of Child and Family Studies found it to be one of the strongest predictors of anxiety, difficulty setting boundaries, and chronic people-pleasing in adulthood. You did not choose to become your parents' emotional caretaker. You just did it, because the alternative felt like danger.
Sign 2. Your feelings were treated as problems to be solved, or simply ignored. When you were sad, they changed the subject. When you were scared, they told you to stop being dramatic. When you were angry, that was the worst one, because your anger made them uncomfortable, and their comfort always came first. So over time, you stopped bringing your feelings to them. And then, slowly and quietly, you stopped trusting your feelings at all. You learned to push through, to override, to be fine. And no one ever told you that was wrong. That's the part that stays with you. Sign 3. There was love, but it came with conditions you had to figure out alone. This is one of the most confusing parts of growing up with an emotionally immature parent. They were not withholding love on purpose, but the love you received felt unstable. Some days it was warm and present. Other days it disappeared without warning, and you never knew why. You just knew it was your fault. Dr. Gibson describes this as love depended on how you made them feel, not who you were. You learned very early that love is not guaranteed. It is a performance, and you had better figure out what the audience wants. Sign 4. You felt lonely in your own home. Not alone, there were people there, but lonely in a way that is hard to explain. Like there was a version of you that no one was ever quite interested in meeting. Your real thoughts, your real fears, your real self, those felt too risky to show. Research shows that children who grow up without a parent who can truly tune in to what they feel carry a very specific kind of loneliness into adulthood. The kind that does not go away, even when someone is right next to you, even when your life looks full from the outside.
Sign 5. You became an expert at reading the room. You knew, before you even walked through the door, what kind of night it was going to be. You could feel the tension before anyone said a single word. You became fluent in a language no child should ever have to learn, the language of your parents' emotional state. And here is what nobody tells you. That hypervigilance does not turn off when you leave home. It follows you into classrooms, into offices, into relationships. It makes you extraordinarily perceptive, and it makes it almost impossible to ever truly relax.
Sign 6. Conflict felt catastrophic. Emotionally immature parents handle conflict in one of two ways. Some explode, big reactions, disproportionate anger, emotional weather that fills every room in the house. Others shut down completely. The silent treatment, days of coldness, a distance that felt like it might never end. Either way, the child learns the same lesson. This is not safe. Disagreement leads to abandonment or destruction. So you learned to avoid it, to smooth things over, to swallow what you actually thought, and give people the version of you that kept the peace. Dr. Gibson's research shows this is one of the most lasting effects of emotionally immature parenting: the inability to tolerate conflict in adult relationships, even healthy conflict, even necessary conflict, because your nervous system learned early that conflict always ends badly. Sign 7. You grew up faster than you should have. In the way that means you were carrying weight that was never yours to carry, making yourself small so they could feel big, understanding the adult tensions in the house, the unspoken grief, the financial stress, things no child should ever have to hold, and no one ever teaches you how to put that weight down.
Sign 8. You apologize for things that are not your fault. Constantly, automatically, before anyone even has the chance to be upset. Because you spent years in an environment where someone's unhappiness was always, somehow, traced back to you. Sorry became your first language, even when you did nothing wrong, because being wrong first felt safer than waiting to be blamed. Sign 9. You struggle to know what you actually need. When someone asks what you want, for dinner, from a relationship, from your life, there's a blankness that comes over you. Not laziness, not indifference, a genuine difficulty accessing your own desires. Because for so long, your needs were simply not the point. You adapted, you adjusted, you became whoever the room needed you to be. Developmental psychology research consistently links this kind of self-erasure to difficulty building a stable sense of identity in adulthood. When you spend your childhood reflecting someone else's emotional world, you do not get much practice building your own. Sign 10. You love them, and it still hurt. This is the one that's hardest to say out loud, because it would be easier in some ways if they had been monsters. You could be angry without guilt. You could grieve without confusion. But they weren't monsters. They were limited. They gave what they had, and what they had was not enough for what you needed. And both of those things can be true at the same time. Here is what matters now. Recognizing these patterns doesn't mean you have to cut anyone off, or forgive anyone before you are ready, or resolve anything overnight. It means you finally have language for something you have carried in silence for most of your life. Research shows one thing at the center of recovery: the moment the adult child stops trying to get from their parent what they were never capable of giving and starts giving it to themselves. You were not too sensitive. You were not too much. You were a child who needed more than you got. And you deserved more. If this hits somewhere deep, save this video. Share it with someone who needs it. Next time, we're going to talk about why the people who were raised this way often become the most empathetic, perceptive, and quietly powerful people in any room they walk into. Because that part of the story matters too.